Well, we start this news hour in Russia, where President Vladimir Putin has approved the broader use of nuclear weapons. The Kremlin says Moscow has the right to deploy nuclear arms if the use of conventional weapons against it or Belarus creates a critical threat to its sovereignty. The new policy also states that any aggression against Russia by a nation with the support of a nuclear state will be considered a joint attack. US President Joe Biden has recently allowed Ukraine to use missiles provided by Washington inside Russian territory, which Moscow has called an escalation. Russia has been stepping up its attacks on Ukraine's northeastern border region of Sumy, which killed at least 6 people on Tuesday. The area borders the Russian region of Kursk, which Ukraine invaded in August. Yulia, you've been looking into this document. Putin himself has signed this off, which means it's loosened the criteria for Russia's use of nuclear weapons. What more details do you have on this?
Well, since the beginning of the Ukrainian conflict, Vladimir Putin has been threatening the West with nuclear weapons and trying to make it part of the conflict. Now we see that he has approved Russia's new nuclear doctrine. According to the document, as you mentioned, Russia will now be able to use nuclear weapons after receiving, quote unquote, reliable information about the mass launch of air and space attack vehicles, as well as in the event of an attack on the country using conventional weapons, including cruise missiles and UAVs, not just nuclear weapons. Also, any aggression against Russia by a non-nuclear state with the support of a nuclear state will be considered a joint attack. Also, it's interesting, it's mentioned that aggression by any state within a military coalition is considered aggression by this coalition as a whole. And an attack on Russia's ally, like Belarus, for instance, will also be considered a threat for Russia. So the use of Western non-nuclear weapons by the Ukrainian armed forces, for instance, against Russia under the new doctrine may lead to a nuclear response. That's according to Vladimir Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov. Also, Russia's move, as you said, comes hot on the heels of Sunday's announcement by the United States, which gave Ukraine permission to use tactical ATACMS missiles for strikes against Russia. And that was a response to the alleged deployment of North Korean troops in the Kursk region. So here in Russia, many called the US permission basically something that will create an escalation that threatens the start of a third world war.
OK, well, thanks very much for that update from Moscow, Yulia. Asad Beg now joins us live now from Kyiv for reaction from the other side. How has Ukraine been reacting, if at all?
Well, Ukraine hasn't specifically reacted to this announcement, but this news from Russia comes hot off the heels, as my colleague said, of Sunday's announcement, the permission, in fact, from the United States for Ukraine to use these longer-range missiles. But it's up to Ukraine when and how they use them, it seems. But it's not the first time Ukraine has had Western-supplied weapons. In fact, they've had these ATACMS missiles for over a year. They've been using them, but they just didn't have the permission to strike deeper into Russia. But they've also been supplied by the United Kingdom and France with the Storm Shadow missile. Again, that is a longer-range missile, but again, not permission to strike deeper in to Russia. They've been supplied with F-16s, tanks, artillery weapons, all from Western countries. So there is nothing new in that sense. But the escalation, it seems, is that this permission allows them to strike much deeper into Russia. And already we've heard today that Ukraine has struck a site in Russia, although they haven't said what weapons exactly that they have used. But this idea that this could lead to a nuclear strike on Ukraine will indeed be very frightening to many Ukrainians, and also send alarm bells ringing across Europe and the rest of the world. Whether it's real or not, you just can't tell. But the fact that this is a specific threat this time, it's always been looming since the start of this war. President Putin has always said that they're a nuclear-armed state. But this actually lowers the threshold for Russia to be able to strike in the event that they feel that they have been threatened.
Okay, thanks very much for that latest update. Asad Beg there in Kyiv. And we also have Al Jazeera's defence editor, Alex Kotopoulos, who's joining me live in the studio. Alex, you've been covering Ukraine yourself. You've been there many times. So Putin, we see, has now broadened the rules, it seems, of engagement and its use of nuclear arms. What does this mean militarily?
Militarily, they have less use than one might think. This is a diplomatic message and is being one of many. So Russia has conducted tactical nuclear weapons drills, has conducted strategic nuclear weapons drills, which involves nuclear weapons submarines, armed bombers, and of course it's a land-based ICBM force, in order to be able to show the world that it still has these weapons. It is a major nuclear power, about 1,700 deployed warheads, so on a par with the United States. But are they in actual much use on the battlefield? Not really, because using one invites an opposing force to use theirs in retaliation, and very quickly you'll have a runaway scenario where you're in general nuclear war, which will be the destruction of everything. So no, they're not that much use, but certainly used diplomatically.
So should the world be worried? I mean, is Russia likely to follow through with using them, or is it sort of flexing muscles given what's going on and the timing of all of this?
It's certainly flexing muscles. It is reminding the world that there's a limit. And this is a de facto red line. By the way, the things that the changes to the Russia's nuclear doctrine that Putin put in place were started to roll from September onwards. So this is his ratification of what has already been in the pipeline. But yes, this is reminding the world that it is a nuclear power and there's a limit to what it will take. But it really doesn't have many options, as we discussed, in terms of using it militarily. The only real option would be to scare the world a little by perhaps testing on its own soil and reminding them what a nuclear weapon looks like.
So we've seen that Ukraine has received the green light to use those long-range missiles. Do you see all of this could possibly lead to a major escalation? I mean, it's been 1,000 days now,
yes.
And already the Kremlin is saying it will certainly continue with what it's doing when it comes to Ukraine.
And it's one of many. So Russia invited large amounts of foreign troops on its soil, allegedly North Koreans, to fight in Kursk to help Russia take back land that Ukraine took. That is a big escalation as well, the large amount of foreign troops within Russia itself. And then, of course, the United States responds by saying, well, then you can use US-made weapons on targets within Russia itself. And now this third response. So this is this kind of worry that that an escalation can just keep on, yet this tit-for-tat escalation that will just increase in intensity until you've got a major conflict on your hands, something far larger than already exists. And we're talking about 700,000 to 800,000 men on each side under arms. So imagine something that much bigger.
Okay, thanks very much, Alex Kotopoulos, our defence editor, for sort of breaking that down for us.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.